I don't see a real pathway. I think the Rooney Rule is a crock of shit. I always did. You can't force somebody to interview. It's like, okay, you come up with this rule to say you have to interview a minority black person before you make your real hiring decision. Of course, they're just going to, if you're forcing me to do this, I am going to show you even more how much power I have just by showing up drunk to the interview.
So Brian Flores, who was fired after 2 winning seasons, and those are the first 2 consecutive winning seasons for the Dolphins since I think 2002, 2003.
Correct.
So by any on-field measure, he was succeeding. And we talked about this before. The team started very poorly this year. They didn't give up on him. They kept fighting. They got to a 500 record at 9-8, plus 500 record, and then he's fired. And the way this coaching cycle has gone, the only active black head coach in the league is Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
And there's not necessarily even a strong indication that any of the remaining opens, and I believe there's 4 or 5, are going to go to a minority coach.
So, yeah, and here's the thing. So he is the it's supposedly said that he's the leading candidate for the Houston Texans. If anything, he's a finalist for sure. He's a final of 3 coaching candidates. But the Houston Texans have been a dumpster fire. They have their quarterback of the future, if you will, Deshaun Watson is he wants out. He's going to get out. Not only that, he's fondling therapists all over the place. So that's not the ideal, attractive job.
But they hired David Cowley, a black coach.
Yeah.
He did not have a great record, but he didn't have Deshaun Watson. They went 4-12 with Deshaun Watson the year before. He goes there without him. They go 4-13, but by most accounts played harder. They didn't have J.J. Watt either. There's a young team without a lot of talent. I mean, arguably one of the 2 or 3 worst rosters in the league.
Yeah.
And he gets run out of
in
town
year
one.
In year one.
And if you look at the NFL record of hiring minority coaches, number 1, they don't do it often. Number 2, on the occasions that they do it, there's a very short leash for any success. There's been a couple of black head coaches fired with winning records, including Brian Flores over the last 2 seasons.
Right.
And then once you've been fired, getting a second opportunity to be a head coach in the NFL is extremely rare. The league implemented several years ago, and it's gone through several reinventions or modifications, the Rooney Rule, which basically requires teams to interview a minority candidate for these positions. And the reality of the practice of this is it's become a pointless formality.
It's a piece of shit.
And that's at the core of what Brian Flores is claiming.
Yeah, it is.
A couple of years ago, he had an interview with the Denver Broncos. The Broncos head guys, including John Elway, were an hour late. They appeared disheveled and hungover and vaguely interested during the interview. And then the bombshell, as it were, that's really the crux of this case, he was going to be interviewing and did interview for the Giants job. A day or 2 before he was to interview, he gets a text message from Bill Belichick, who he worked for, saying essentially, "Congratulations, Brian." Belichick, to be believed, is a text the wrong Brian. And quickly says, "My bad. I was meaning to text Brian Dable," who also worked for him and who was hired in the job. But at that point, it wasn't public knowledge. And a day or 2 later, Flores goes through with the interview, knowing that at this point he's got no chance to be hired. The interview is a sham. And this is what he's claiming. And
it's 1,000% correct. And what's going to happen is, so how do you fix it, right? That's what we're gonna. That's really where this conversation goes to. But there's so much to unpack with what Flores is saying. I mean, the documents that he has submitted. I mean, it's very well thought out. It's very well put together. I mean, he's going at them hard. He has hardcore evidence, and now what he's doing is he's asking other black coaches to come on the ride with him. So they can further further uncover what's going on in these so-called interviews that these black head coaches are getting.
And here's the thing, and I did not know a lot about Brian Flores. I was pretty impressed with what he did with a pretty bad Dolphins team. But here's the situation. This guy is a relatively young guy with head coaching experience. He, in filing this lawsuit, in high likelihood, will never coach in the NFL again. So he's doing this at great personal harm to his career. This is a display of courage. He's also, today, went on several interviews, spoke candidly about these issues.
He did.
He's not a guy who hid or filed a complaint and is hiding behind his lawyers and letting them do the talking. He's stepped to the forefront
He's out
of
in
this,
front, man.
leading the way, and as you just said, imploring others to join him.
There are similarities for what people are drawing similarities from what him and the Kaepernick situation.
Yeah.
The main difference is Flores is out in front of this, and he's not appearing to go away.
Well, Cap was out in front, but there's
In a different way, I guess.
there's a critical distinction, and at the end of the day, both men, and let's not confuse this, are displaying a tremendous amount of personal courage. In the face of losing their career. But the difference is Kaepernick was using the platform of football to appeal to wider, broader social justice, mistreatment by law enforcement of people of color. Flores, it's narrower, but it's the same wheelhouse.
It's the same wheelhouse.
This is the game that I love. This is the craft that I've worked on, and you guys have mucked this up with your racist behavior.
Yeah.
And I am going to step forward with theoretically plenty of coaching in front of me. Now, I'm not at the end of my career. I'm, and it has been. And whatever. It's not Tony Dungy doing it.
Yeah.
Who's in broadcasting and retired. This is a guy that should be entering the peak years of his coaching career, doing it now.
That makes a huge difference, man. And did you see what he released on the Dolphins owner Ross, who told him, I will pay you $100,000 for each loss
to lose games
in his first year.
Pick. Correct.
Yeah. In his first year with the Dolphins, Flores' first year with the Dolphins. Apparently, the owner said, I'll give you $100,000 just for every game that you lose. Now, he didn't do that. Instead, he went against the owner's wishes and won as many games as he possibly could. But guess what? If he would have went 0 whatever for a higher draft pick, he would have been out of there that next season because he didn't win enough games.
That's probably the truth.
That's it's a word. And it was another coach today, a black coach who came on ESPN who was saying that he also received that. The owner.
It was Hugh Jackson, I believe.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson,
who was in Cincinnati, the Bengals.
Yeah. Who said he also the owner also asked him to lose more games for higher draft picks as well.
I would say this: I'm not a big Hugh Jackson fan. He was on the ESPN or not the HBO show.
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
He didn't seem very good.
Yeah.
I just was not. He did not impress me as a person, as a coach, or a leader.
His run ran stale in Cincinnati. But I mean, just to Flores, right? So what also I like about it is towards the end, he gave some action items to what he believes can fix the problem, right? So he's not just raising the issue. He's also saying, okay, hey, it's not perfect, but these are some things I would do to implement and change.
What did he suggest? I didn't catch all that.
The one thing and the only thing that I really stood out.
I was working my day job.
That stood out to me was having the players have an input in coaching, in the coaches, right? And what coaches are hired. I think that is good. I do think that is really good. I would like to hear the players speak out more. I'm 50-50 on that because NBA and NFL is very different in the sense of the NFL, these players are on non-guaranteed contracts.
Right.
The
injury rate is higher.
These guys, they want their money and they just want to work and go home. You know what I mean? A lot of those guys.
Yeah. There's very few, by comparison, there's smaller roster in basketball, and better basketball players are more critical to success. The nature of the game. 10 people on the floor, one great player playing both ends has a greater influence over everything.
Yeah, because even the quarterback. I mean, even the quarterback. There are maybe 10 quarterbacks that can stand out in front of an issue and not have anything to worry about. You know what I mean?
I'd say 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Truly.
You know what I mean?
I mean, again, I personally feel that just positionally, quarterback in the NFL is the hardest, most difficult individual position in sports.
Yeah.
It's what you have to do, how you have to do it, and the incumbent leadership and gravity of that position is the most difficult in sports.
Yeah, it is. It is. And yet and still, you know, I don't know, a guy, whatever, a guy like Josh McCown or whatever. I don't even think Lamar Jackson would be stable. If Lamar Jackson comes out and stands on a ledge and be the first player to say, hey, if you don't hire a black coach here, I'm not playing. They may say, well, Lamar, you can go to the XFL or something.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
and
you're
Lamar
right.
is that franchise. He is the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
But I don't think he withstands that.
No, I mean, honestly, we just lost one in Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers has worked himself into a very strange position, but he's presented as zero fucks given guy all
Anyhow,
year.
yeah.
Maybe Mahomes.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of growing
Mahomes
into that.
Yeah.
Kind of reaching his peak. But again, a lot of the other guys who even have some promise, like a Josh Allen, they haven't elevated their voice yet, really, in any capacity.
Anything, yeah.
They're just playing, you know. And granted, those guys like him, Joe Burrow, the kind of the young wave, the guy Abair out in San Diego or Los Angeles now, they're younger. They're kind of making their way. Lamar's in that, like, he's got an MVP. He's had very modest playoff success.
Yeah.
And people still on some level doubt him as a long-term guy.
Yeah,
They
me too.
recognize the talent, but the way that he plays, is he going to age gracefully? That's a huge question.
It's a humongous question. Now, going forward, I don't see a pathway to hiring more black head coaches. I don't see a real pathway. I think the Rooney Rule is a crock of shit. I always did. You can't force somebody to interview. It's like, okay, you come up with this rule to say you have to interview a minority black person before you make your real hiring decision. Of course, they're just going to, if you're forcing me to do this, I am going to show you even more how much power I have just by showing up drunk to the interview, not giving a damn, an hour late, and then I'll hire my real guy 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's a box to check.
You can't force an owner who has preconceived notions, who is in a family probably of sustained racism and stuff like that in their families. You can't expect them to these 60, 70, 80-year-old men, billionaires, to fucking change their mind, because it's a mindset. It's not a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
Yeah.